So that's what I mean. You get these coincidental moments, these validation points that say you are on the right path. And part of the human experience and the human challenge is to remember these obstacles and then to overcome them. And then as we overcome them, we get the chance to grow. And when we grow, we get the chance to achieve and experience all kinds of new levels that we had never done before.
Now the question was how anybody can get more positive vibes, more adrenaline, more action in their lives. Probably it will not be enough to get a head on the head like you do. What would you recommend for somebody? Maybe there is a 37 years old guy or a 31 years old lady and the life is okay, but they feel bored and they don't even know what to do. Can they Google how to get more action in life, or what you recommend?
Yeah, so I think maybe a great technique would be to start allowing themselves to think broader. So I always do my best to help people think about what is on your big 5 for life list. And those are the 5 things that you most want to do, see, or experience in your lifetime before you pass away. And that could be a matter of flipping through a book that shows amazing places around the planet and say, wow, like I really want to go there. I really want to see Angkor Wat in Cambodia and see these amazing, amazing ancient temples. Or it's to go to the Da Vinci Museum in Italy and see these incredible inventions that this guy came up with, you know, again, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, in this genius mind that transformed the way in which we allow ourselves to have access to water, just the crazy cool inventions that have come about because of that. So it's about allowing yourself to think broader and dream a bit and say, what are those adventures? And again, I get very inspired by looking at visual material. So whether it's a picture book, whether it's a magazine about sailing, whether it's watching a couple of YouTube videos about something that's, even if it just sounds sort of interesting, you don't know for sure that that's the way you want to spend your time, but any of those things can create that spark. And the trick is to allow the spark to blossom, because very often what happens is that we get inspired by something and then we sort of get buried with the everyday activities and the everyday work and the everyday responsibilities. But what I've found is that when you have the spark and you start to bring that into your life more and more every day. So maybe it starts off, you watch a YouTube video about seeing the Da Vinci Museum. And then the next day you get online and you start looking at the different exhibits. And then the next day you start actually looking at Google Maps and say, well, where is that museum? Like, where would I have to go to physically walk through the door of the place? And then next thing you know, you're looking at airline tickets. Well, what would it cost to fly to this destination? And you start to make it real. And then, and this is such a critical step, there is something miraculous and marvelous and wonderful that happens when you do what I call drawing the line in the sand. And that means that's the point at which you make the commitment. And so if you say, you know what, on July 22nd, I'm going to walk into that museum, or on July 22nd, I'm going to dive the Great Barrier Reef, or whatever the dream is, that when you make that commitment, it's like all of these unseen forces that you couldn't possibly imagine, all of a sudden are like, wow, that's what you're serious about? Okay, we're here to help. And whether it's you'll be in a coffee shop and you'll be looking at someone and they're reading a magazine about the exact place that you want to go, and then you get into this conversation, or you know, you're in line somewhere and someone mentions something exactly about, it's these crazy coincidences, unseen connection points that just start to materialize when you make the commitment that you're serious about this and you're going to go do it.
That's so great that you say it. Thank you so much, John, because Goethe, the German philosopher and author, said something pretty similar, like you need this commitment, and everybody in this, or also another big author like you, Paulo Coelho, that the whole universe is starting to change just because he got a commitment, a decision, and it's floating. What is your experience? If you remember maybe 1-2 stories in your life that just started by this one decision, just one small idea, one small thought.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's 2 that immediately leap to mind. One is the book. So The Cafe on the Edge of the World. Had I not have, I came back from an adventure
and nobody believed it, right? It was just an idea in your head, and now millions of people are
exactly. This is kind of the amazing thing about life, is that everything starts from nothing. And so it's a spark of insight, a flash of intuition that says, this is something that is calling to me. Again, whether it's I want to go to Africa, or I want to see the Da Vinci Museum, or in my case, it was I feel inspired to start typing something. And so I felt this inspiration and I started typing, and 21 days later, there was basically the cafe on the edge of the world. And then it could have ended right there, you know, that could have been the end of the story with it. But I felt, okay, so now it's further action. I want to turn it into a book. And then it wasn't always 100% easy. I've been rejected by, I think, over 200, all my titles worldwide have been rejected by over 200 publishers. So it's not always that everyone is like, yes, this is the greatest thing ever.
Come on.
No, seriously. I actually got a rejection letter when it was on the bestseller list. Like someone had never gotten around to looking at it.
Wow.
But the point is that on the contrary to that, there were so many times, I can't remember if we talked about this in our last interview, so stop me if we did. But after I had the experience of typing the cafe on the edge of the world, it really flowed through me over the course of 21 days. The very first person to ever read the completed manuscript, her opening words to me when I met her, she's the editor of a magazine, were, "Your book has changed my life."
Wow.
And, you know, so that's what I mean. You get these coincidental moments, these validation points that say you are on the right path. And all of that experience of writing the cafe book came because I'd spent a year and backpacked around the world. And the spark for that came from just, I think, going back to my childhood. What was I interested in? I was interested in seeing the world and having these adventures. And so there was a point in which I said, I'm going to go do it. Here's the day I'm leaving. And then I remember writing in my journal that there were 1,000 reasons why this trip made no sense and couldn't happen before I left. And after 1 week on the road, not one of those 1,000 reasons was still valid anymore.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's a really strong inspirational story for so many people. I think thousands of people will watch this video and afterwards say 200 no's. And now it's the best-selling books which you wrote in whole Europe, in the world. John, what would you recommend to a person? I mean, the problem of today is, I always say in German, the word called Zuvilisation, not civilization, but it's Zuvilisation, which means in German translated like it's too much of all of this. Yeah. The study shows us that within one day, a person today has so much options to find themselves on Netflix and shopping and all this stuff. What was about 100 years ago for one normal person in the whole entire life.
Right.
And the people are so outside that they lose this inner connection. And if they have like idea, they still can't decide, is it my intuition or is it like my stupid brain? How they can decide it? How do you, what would you recommend? How does it for you work? That you know, this is a moment, this is a place, this is a time to go.
Right. You know, first of all, it's fascinating to me that as the human story continues to evolve, the ways in which we are challenged changes. And so you're right. 100 years ago, the challenge was, if my dream was to go to Hawaii, for example, 100 years ago, the logistics of it, finding anybody who even knew what Hawaii was or where Hawaii was, and finding transport to get there, like all of that stuff would have been huge obstacles. Now those obstacles are like effortless. And so in order for us to progress as humans, it's almost like as we progress, the challenges also have to rise commensurately so that we still have the opportunity to grow emotionally, courageously. And so in this environment where there are a million distractions every single second, if we're not careful, the great opportunity is to focus. And that is allowing ourselves to trust our intuition. As you said, like, what's the difference between I just was bombarded with a marketing message which said, do this, and an intuitive thought which says, do this. And that to me is something that we learn the difference over time. One feels very authentic. And I say feel like literally you either get goosebumps when you feel it, you sort of get chills up and down the spine. Maybe your heart actually feels a little bit different. I've never, ever watched an advertisement for something and felt that same reaction. Like there's no comparison between the two. You know when it's an authentic moment of connection. And the more you feel that and recognize it and take a moment, take a pause moment and say, yes, that's what that is, then the more you reinforce, like, that's the feeling I'm going for. I'm going for the moments when it really gives me chills, right? It just brings me to a place that nothing else seems to take me to. And that's when you know that's my spot. whether that is going to Africa, whether it's to go to Da Vinci Museum, whether it's to go swim with sharks, whatever. But that's when you know, like, this is my thing. And once you know that, then the next step is to start to consolidate your focus. This is why I talk so often about the Big Five for Life, because the Big Five for Life allows you to wake up first thing in the morning and say, whatever is on my to-do list, whatever is on my activity list, it should be supporting and bringing about these 5 things. And if it's not, I'm just not going to spend my time, my energy, my resources on it, because I'm going to focus on these 5 things. Not because a marketing message told me to, not because John or Maxime told me to, but because I, as an individual, decided these are my Big Five for life, and that's where I want to spend my time. And I will tell you that this gets easier and easier with practice. It just becomes to the point where it's effortless. You look at something that is a potential distraction and you say, oh, no, not part of my Big Five for life, not now. You know?
Would you recommend to have like a kind of ritual? Like maybe you have a kind of ritual when you're writing your books, or are you a guy who works with rituals like you do, but special things in the same way?
I have numerous things that have proven very useful for me. One is a mantra technique that I use where every first thing in the morning, I go through the 5 things that I most want to do, see, or experience in my life. And I go through each one of them 5 times. Last thing before I go to bed, I put my head on the pillow before I fall asleep. I do the exact same thing. And then anytime my brain wants to start racing away, which it does, I will catch it racing away. And by racing away, I mean, maybe you had a challenging experience somehow. You had a negative customer service experience and your boss was mean at you, or something happened, which is negative. In the past, my mind would like to replay that conversation countless times, with me always perfecting my part of it until I had gotten it perfect. And a number of years ago, I realized just how useless this was. It was like I was trying to perfect the past, but the past is, I'm never going to have a chance to go back and fix that. And so now when I catch my mind looping or running away like that, I bring it back to my Big Five for life, or something at this moment that is really important to me that's related to my Big Five for life. And that also takes practice. It took me about 3 months to get to the point where I could catch my brain within seconds trying to run away and bring it back to focus. Once this has been mastered, and again, it doesn't take, if I can master it, anybody can master it, and it doesn't take long to master. And once you do it, I think it just reinforces on the unconscious level that this is what's important to you. And therefore you have more of those coincidental connections. If you're going to be on Netflix surfing, you happen to find the thing that is actually relevant to you that you're really interested in, as opposed to being just completely distracted.
So it's like an instrument which you tune. Yeah. So the whole body, and then you're in this energy of this whole human spirituality connection, world, universe, and then you don't have to fight for your goal. It's like coming to you, towards you, right?
Totally. Yeah. So I think that's an awesome point. That's sort of the attractor element to it. That if you think of the universe being a benevolent presence, you can use the word God, you can use the word universe, you can use cosmic algorithm. If you think of that all of that is sort of looking at the ways in which you're spending your time, the thoughts that you're having, the emotions that you're experiencing, and based on that sort of data, it's then giving you more of whatever you're spending your time on. Then yes, we want to be attracting the things that are most relevant to the life that we want to live. So again, if our mind is off racing in la la land on stuff that is not related to our Big Five for life, then the algorithm goes, oh, well, I guess they're really interested in that stuff. And so be careful what we're sending out, because that's going to impact what's coming in. In addition to that, this is a major aha that I had a couple of years ago. And I think I wrote about it in one of the ahas books that I wrote as a short little piece. And that is that if we're not, so think of the world, think of life as like 100 television channels, and like anything that you want to watch, whether it's sports, whether it's nature, whether it's business, whether it's inventors, like it's all out there. And unfortunately, I noticed that sometimes we get caught in the loop where we realize one of the channels is one that we don't like, or 2 of the ones are the ones that we don't like. And we spend all our time talking to everyone about how bad those channels are. And it's like we forget that, listen, if you don't like that channel, just don't watch it. Right? There's 97 other channels that you may like a lot more than those 3 that you don't like. But I've had to take some pretty drastic decisions in my life with certain people who only would talk about the 3 channels that they hated. Every time I saw them, they were just complaining and talking about what they didn't like about the world. And at some point, if you're too much in that negative energy, you just don't feel really good about life. And so I had to make some tough decisions and just say, I just don't want to spend time with these people anymore. Not that they're bad people, just the way in which they approach life is different than the way that I do.
So the summary of what you just said is everything is connected, and you can always decide, like a radio, which channel you would like to listen.
Yeah.
And the same especially about you, John. This is really a huge compliment from me personally. You just said the last time, I think after our interviews, you said, Maxim, when I write my book, I read carefully every single word, whether I feel it or not. And it was like, for me, it's wow, this is the same Da Vinci energy. It's kind of perfectionist. He loves these details. And this is the same tune, right? Does it feels good for you? Does it feels good for the people afterwards? And makes this place magical. The books are, this powerful inspiration. A lot of people try to do it from this head, and you just let it flow. You let it go. Wow. John, you spoke about Big Five for life. What are yours? I didn't ask you last time, I think.
Thank you. So first of all, thanks for asking. That's always the highest compliment when one human to another is interested to know what are the things that matter most for everyone who's listening and watching. If you want to get into some amazing life conversations, allow yourself to be courageous to ask someone, what are your Big Five for life? And if that sort of, you can ask them, have you ever read the Big Five for Life book? And that immediately could be a connection between the two of you, and then ask them, so what are your Big Five for life? If someone hasn't read the book, well, you can just explain very briefly, well, it's the 5 things I most want to do, see, or experience in my lifetime. And I like to have interesting conversations with interesting people, and you seem like an interesting person. And I was just curious, what are the things that you most want to do, see, or experience in your life? That single little interchange between 2 human beings can lead to the most amazing conversations. And it's incredible to me how very often, not only does it lead to a fantastic interchange between the 2 people, but very often there's actually a connection, like something on your Big Five for life and something on their Big Five for life are connected. And that's the reason that the universe has put you and them in the exact same place at the same time. If we don't allow ourselves to have the conversation, though, then that opportunity passes. It's like 2 ships passing in the night, never recognizing each other. So on my list, number 1 is to have a loving relationship with the people who matter most to me. Number 2 is to travel the world. As we were talking about, that was something that was on hold a bit. Although in our last interview, I talked about how even if I couldn't travel big, I was at least trying to travel small within an hour and a half of my house. Number 3 is to master mind over matter. That is I'm fascinated by the capabilities that we have within us from a brain perspective, from an unconscious mind perspective. And so I'm constantly seeking and learning new ways that we can enhance our ability to think, to process and use all of this potential within us. I just watched a really fascinating video that I've been incorporating about breathing, and how you simply do 90 breaths in the morning, and the way in which that makes you feel and the good things it does for the alkalinity of your body is something that inspires me greatly. It literally only took 2 sessions for me to sort of get the rhythm of it down, and I feel so great when I do it. So it's Wim Hof is the guy, and if you watch a couple of videos by him, he gives away the methodology and the practice easily on YouTube. And I'm not saying it works for everyone, but for me, I found it to be a very, very powerful way to start my morning after I do my mantra work. So that's number 3. And then number 4 is to inspire as many people as possible through the work that I do, whether it's the books that I write. The 4th Cafe book will be coming out. We'll be announcing that shortly, but that'll be coming out next year. And so that's something I'm excited about, being back in Europe, back in Germany and Austria and Switzerland and talking about.
And the last one to me, because our community has to know. They will ask me. They will kill me if I don't ask her. You will tell me the date, and we will spread it all over Europe.
Awesome. Well, I will tell. So I'll give you a sneak peek then into it, which is right now, I believe it's May 17th, which is the official day that it comes out of 2022. Wow. And I will be in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland doing a 10-city tour that kicks off on May 17th. And so details to follow, and I'll certainly make sure that I let you know so that you can let your fans and followers know about that, because it would be
Great.
awesome to see people and have the chance to interact again. And it's something that I'm really, really looking forward to, because I couldn't travel, to see everyone for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And the last one.
Yes.
What's that? Yeah. So the last one is to write a song that breaks the top 10 of the pop charts.
Oh, wow. How are you doing now?
So it's fascinating. So I've written songs before, and I really feel it's one of those where I intuitively will know when the time is right. What I love about music is the way in which music can cause such an instant shift in our state. You hear a song that you love, and you can go from being kind of grumpy or sad or depressed to feeling energized. And so that's something that has always inspired me greatly. And I'm looking forward to having that as one of my big 5 for life.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I just think about Michael Jackson, who said on the question how he's writing a song, he said, when I would sit down and say I would like to write the best song ever, nothing would happen. Something above have to say, this is a time, this is a place, and now it will be led upon you. Like you said, you're waiting for the right moment, but you are, which is really incredible, you're tuning yourself even in the mantras every morning. Mm-hmm. So like also like the tune of the universe, right? And then you're like in the connection with your emotional, spiritual body, and the life is flowing. You don't have to so strong energy and I have to, and let's go. It's just breathing, right? And
yeah, it's such a transition, because I remember when I was in my teens and my early 20s, I had no concept that this is a possible way to live life like the way that I do now. Mm-hmm. There's an effortlessness, even in the face of adversity. This has been a challenging time, obviously, with COVID. My father passed away quite recently. Oh, wow. I'm not saying that life becomes like effortlessly easy when you adopt these things. What I will say is that the confidence that you have, that you can create the life that you want, no matter what that life is, whether it's to be an adventure traveler, whether it's to be an entrepreneur. I know that you made a decision in your life to follow your dream. You had an intuitive flash. We talked about this before. You could have been very successful doing what you were doing before. You probably could have made a long and lengthy career of that. And you decided at some point that you had something that was calling you. And I guess what I'm sharing is that I wasn't in a place when I was in my teens or my early 20s where I realized that when you have those moments, if you believe in yourself and you're willing to look outside and say, well, who's already doing this? And what are the paths that they've used? And to see all of the infrastructure that's already been laid for you and the opportunities that come from that. And then just to have the confidence that says, okay, maybe I don't know all the answers, but I'll figure it out. Other people have figured it out. I can figure this out too. And that you courageously and without fear leap into the adventure, knowing that you're going to make mistakes, knowing that there's going to be challenges, but also knowing that you're going to figure it out as you go. And that you can help bring these things into existence, not just through sheer effort, but also through using the power of breathing, by using the power of the collective consciousness of the universe. These are all tools at our disposal. And when you get comfortable with that, it just makes the game of life a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. I think your second was traveling, right? And you said even due to COVID, if I'm not capable of traveling, then I go at least 1 or 1.5 hours apart from your house. Well, you live in US, in Florida. There's for sure worse places to live on this planet. But why is it so important? Maybe you can tell in 1-2 sentences, because I think that people underestimate this little journeys. What does it do for you, and what does it give to a normal person if it just change the rooms and places?
Yeah, it's so easy to get locked into our box, and whether that's because of the situation that's been going on recently or because of just life. And it's so easy to get locked into habits that are not in alignment with your big 5 for life. And the best analogy I can give is if you loved going to the beach and you went every single weekend, and then someone came to you at the end of 2 years where every single weekend you've been going to the beach because you love to go. And at the end of the 2 years, they said, you can't go to the beach for the next year. You would fight that. You would not accept that. But if you haven't been to the beach in 2 years and someone says you can't go for another year, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, that's not good news, but whatever. I haven't even been over the last 2 years. It's like the more you plug into the things that you love, the more your mind and your heart and your courage propel you forward in the face of obstacles so that you can still do those things. It's like you're connected to what you love. So you don't want to give it up, and you find solutions that otherwise you might not be strong enough to look for.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's a great example, even with the beach. I never heard somebody say it in that beautiful and that simple. It's great. John, now more spiritual question. What is all this about? Why do we come on this planet? Why are we having this looks like we look like our parents? Why you was born in the US, in Florida? No.
Not in Florida, but yes, I was born in the US. Yeah.
What is all this spiritual, metaphysical behind all of this from your perspective?
Yeah, so there's one of two theories as far as the human experience. One is that there is nothing before you're born, there's nothing after, and your parents have sex and you're born, and then you get.
It sounds sad.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is if that is the case, you might as well live a pretty spectacular life, because this is all there is. And so to live a life of fear and uncertainty and never do the things that you want to try doing, like, that would be pointless, because this is it. And when it's over, it's over. The other theory is that you actually are something before you're born, that if you look throughout nature, that it's very almost impossible to find something where energy completely just disappears. It's converted all the time. If you look at a plant as a very basic example, so a plant will start from a tiny little seed, and then it will grow, and at some point it will reach the end of its life cycle, and it will die. And then in the process of dying, it converts into a material that fosters growth for the seeds that it itself germinated. So it's like a self-perpetuating thing. The energy is still there, the form in which the energy takes is different. And so when I think about life, and again, this is just my personal perspective on things, but the more I read, the more I go introspective on this, the more I reflect on it, I believe that we're actually something before we're born. In the book Safari des Lebens, I talk about what I believe to be true, that when we are in the spirit form and we are looking at the potential to enter the human existence, that we think, well, what would make this life really interesting? And we actually select things like a lack of self-confidence, or maybe even living in this geography, or like we kind of map out the life that we're going to drop into. And then next thing we know, there we are, except that when we're born, we don't remember all of these things that we picked off the big board of life. And part of the human experience and the human challenge is to remember these obstacles and then to overcome them. And then as we overcome them, we get the chance to grow. And when we grow, we get the chance to achieve and experience all kinds of new levels that we had never done before. And then inevitably, because this is part of the story, the human life will end as well. And the question is, what happens then? What happens to that soul? What happens to that spirit? And, to me, the fact that you can feel yourself thinking, you can be the observer to your life as well as the participant in your life, tells me that there's two separate things going on here. It's not just that my body is running on automatic and my brain is causing me to be able to speak to you. Like, I'm actually thinking as we're having this conversation. And so that entity that is doing the thinking and aware of the brain processing has to be something separate. And so I don't believe that dies when the physical body dies. I believe that is what goes on to whatever's next. And, theoretically, this is like going way off the edge of the spectrum here, but these are the types of things that I'm so curious about and make me so interested in the human experience. If Einstein was correct in the theory that time is not linear, then although we perceive it to be linear and we act like it is linear, that maybe at the same moment that you and I are having this discussion, that I'm actually also in 1750 and I'm also in 2029. And who knows, right? There could be parallel existences stacked on top of each other. And my spirit, my soul, instead of just getting to experience whatever the challenges are in this life, is actually multitasking. It's actually experiencing challenges in 1750, 2021, and 2070, right? At the same time, so that my soul can grow even more so in the process. I can't say I know how it all works, but I'm fascinated by it. And I do believe that we are something before we're born and that we are something after we're born. And my guess is that we get to go do this time and time again until we sort of master whatever it is we'd like to master in life.
Wow. Did you try to check or traveling maybe in the lives before? Because I've done it. Yeah.
There's a fascinating field of research called it's through hypnosis, where you can do regressions to a previous life. And this is something that is, if you've never done it and you're curious about it, for anybody who's listening, I would highly recommend it. It's a fascinating experience, and maybe for you, it'll be something that's really powerful. Maybe for you, it'll be nothing, but it's just a unique life experience. And if it's something that connects to you, it opens up an interesting set of questions, like I said, about like, wait, if it's possible. And there's a great book. What is it? I'll have to think about it because I can't.
Life After Death? No. Ray Moody? No,
it was written by a guy in the 1970s who had a patient who he used hypnosis on.
Brand Weiss.
Yes.
Many Lives, Many Masters.
Many Lives, Many Masters. Thank you very much. Yes. And so that was the first time I had ever heard of that. And I was like, wow, this is really fascinating.
And he's also in Florida, he wasn't he was like the most important doctor at this big hospital in Florida. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and this patient was Catherine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, that book was written in the 1970s. It's still super, super inspiring. And if that gives us a glimpse into the way the cosmic algorithm of the universe works, then I think we're better off for it in terms of thinking, okay, so if that's part of the way the game is played, what does that mean for me and for my life? And if I have a particular, in his case, he was hypnotizing someone because they had some severe phobias about denim, about choking. And by allowing her to see into a life that she had lived before, as if you believe it, then she was able to move beyond these challenges in her life to open herself up to a whole different spectrum of possibilities. And again, I think that's super powerful, because if one of us, and somebody who's listening or one of us on the call, has a challenge, what we're looking for is what's the best way to overcome the challenge, to move beyond it. And maybe that's part of the answer. I don't know.
Wow. Did you ever try to speak to somebody like a medium, or did you ever get a notice from maybe in your whole entire life, this time, like something in your life will happen? How did it work for you?
I have not had that personal experience. I have numerous friends who have had that experience, including people who are absolutely, completely non-believers that it's possible. And I distinctly remember one, and he said it really rocked his world, because this person was sharing information with him that, quite frankly, there's just no way that they could have known. This was before Google. This was before, and the stuff that this person was sharing with him, like, it wouldn't have even been out there anyway. It was just super, super personal. And it was a relative who had passed away that was having a conversation and sharing information with him. And there's an amazing book called Hello from Heaven by Bill and Judy Guggenheim, which is also a fascinating read to help us think about, wow, what is the way this all works? And they've compiled, I think, over 20 years worth of research into this book. It's a great read. I highly recommend it. And they did a fine job doing it, and it's from stories from around the world. So it's not just like, oh, we just took a look what's happening in one country. They really took a look at the world and said, is this type of experience happening to people? And if so, what does that mean for us as human beings?
Mm-hmm. Wow. John, let's assume there is somebody...
But I want to ask you back. So have you ever done that? Have you ever had an experience?
Yeah, I've done, even in the US, I met a man, he's a Greek, and he was in US, and he is a medium, really famous one. And he's what the Germans can even believe. He's been contacted by FBI when there was a child miss or something like this, which in the US is much more, well, they don't speak about it, but it's more practice than here in Europe. The Germans are really like, next. They're more rational in these topics, and the US is more open according to this stuff. And I learned a lot. I learned about Chinese. I probably spoke in this life over 200 different mediums. I was so interested with beginning 20, what is happening around it. Shakespeare said there is much more than your mind is thinking about on our planet, right? And it was fascinating journey. And I met also people and mediums. You just say, hello, my name is Maxim, and what can you tell me about Thomas? And then they tell you your connection between Thomas. They tell you how he is working, what time of guy is he, and you say, come on, cannot be serious. And I have even one friend, she's a medium, and yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating because you understand, okay, the rational mind it's not the end, just the start of the journey. Okay, what was the best advice you've ever received in your life?
Wow, there's been tons of it, but the very first thing is do it and do it now.
Wow. I read something similar from Brian Tracy. He said all the time, do it now, do it now, do it now, like programming the subconscious mind. The next one, what does luck or success for you especially means?
I think luck is what happens when we're talking, what you and I were talking about before, that when you draw the line in the sand and you start to send a very loud homing beacon to the universe, that random moments of coincidence, luck, all those kind of things start to come into play. It's actually not luck. It's that you're demonstrating to the cosmic algorithm of the universe that this is what's important to me, and that's responding in kind.
Mm-hmm. Great. You American people, you are number one in marketing, and the same is for the Super Bowl, which is worldwide the biggest. I think there are almost 2 billion people watching this event. There is no event, not even soccer, nothing like this, World Cup, which combines so many people watching. If you would get like 5 to 10 minutes, instead of Shakira, today is John Strzelecki, and you would have this option to share 3 messages with the whole world, what would you say? 3 messages to this planet.
First of all, I like that idea. That would be super cool. I don't know if the Super Bowl would ever transition from entertainment to inspiration for their 10 minutes of halftime show, but that would be pretty darn cool. If I had 10 minutes, I would make sure that it was entertaining and funny and inspirational at the same time. And the overriding message would be that, again, life is about 28,900 days. You're seeing these players out here fulfilling their life's dream. Let them be an inspiration for you. Maybe you're not going to be out on the football fields, but there is a dream that you have inside your heart, and let that dream come to life in the same way that these players have their dream being fulfilled tonight right on the field.
Wow.
And I'd probably weave in a little bit about the Big Five for life. And yeah, the hope would be that people watching would realize that they're no different from that athlete. They're a human on the planet, just like that person is. Now, that person's dream is to play football, but your dream might be something different. But the fact that they can do it is inspiring, that we can do it in our lives too.
Wow. And it's like you said, when people, in my seminars, we get like around 1,000 people in the bigger seminars. And it's so often that in the breaks, the people are telling each other, what's your Big Five for life? You know, it's so amazing work. I can't say anything else. And like you said, when people speaking about these topics, they're not like small talk, they're going directly deep talk, right? This is in a voice connection. It's so strong. John, so the last question. You are now 97 years old. You're sitting in the backyard, the alligators are still there, and you're looking, there is like a kind of person coming from behind, and it's getting closer and closer, and you see, oh wow, I can't believe it. This is John from the year 2021, and you are this old, wise man, even more wise than you are probably today, and you would like have 5 minutes with this John from 2021. What would you say to him? One message was 97, end of this life. To the John today.
Yeah. You know, I think about that stuff all the time. And I think at that point, so first of all, I hope to live to be 150 if technology continues to improve. So I'd be about 2/3 through my life at that 100 mark. But, and so that might be part of the message, is like, hey, plan accordingly. But I think at the end of the day, for me personally, what it comes down to is constantly allowing myself to focus on the things that matter most to me. I think that's why the Big Five for life is something that came to me and that I created and talk about so often, because it is a world of distractions out there. And if we're not careful, the time goes by so quickly. And we look at a day. I'll tell you, one of the things I do, Maxim, is I look at the end of every day and I say, did I do today well? Mm-hmm. You know, like today it's gone. Like it's gone. One of my 28,900 is now gone. Did I do today well or not? And so I guess the message from 97 years old would be, do your days well.
Oh, wow. It's you are one of the biggest geniuses of our lives, of our time. Dear John, blessings to you, blessings to your family. I'm so sorry with your dad. I was not there to ask before because I was not sure how he's doing. And you're inspiring millions, you know, and you are blessed. You are given, and your soul is so beautiful, and your soul's beautiful genius mind. Thank you so much for sharing with us, with our community. We will link the books, and I'm so happy you have 1 hour for us. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. And thanks for doing what you do. Like, this is, I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but my closing thought will be this, that your courage and your decision to leap into doing the work that you do now is an expansion. You know, think about all the ways in which people can connect to great content because you had the courage as one soul on the planet, one individual, to follow your heart, to follow your calling. And I think that's part of the great challenge for each of us, is to allow ourselves to find that courage, to embrace that courage, to go live our big 5 for life and live the existence that we want to live, not just for ourselves, but for our kids to see that that's possible, for the people around us to be inspired by the way in which we live our lives. And I think if we do that, then at the end of the day, we can say, I lived it well.
You're such a wise man. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Ich freue mich, dass du bis zum Ende geschaut hast. Hier findest du entsprechend ein Geschenk, einen passenden Videokurs im Wert von 99 € von mir. Und hier kannst du den Kanal abonnieren.